If you're watching this video, you might already have a decent understanding of non-native invasive species. But just in case, let's go over the basics. A non-native species is an organism that does not naturally occur in an area, but is introduced as the result of deliberate or accidental human activities. Non-native species don't always pose a threat to native ecosystems. Take tomatoes, for example. An invasive species is a non-native species that causes harm to the environment, economy, human health, or plant health. In order for a plant or an animal to be classified as invasive, it must do harm. Here at EcoForesters, we like to say, just because it's green doesn't mean it's healthy. Invasive plants are present on about 1 out of every 10 southern forest acres and are expected to double their extent in the next 50 years. Because they aren't in their native habitat, these plants lack natural control and are often resistant to native predators. Many are drought and shade tolerant, and others, like Tree of Heaven, release chemicals into the soil that disrupt native plants. These species spread quickly in disturbed areas like roadsides or areas where a natural disaster has occurred. They can also produce massive amounts of seeds. Tree of Heaven can produce over 300,000 seeds per year. These species can displace native plants, increase wildfire risk, affect wildlife habitat, and reduce biodiversity. So, how do we fight against them? First, I'd like to introduce you to Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly.
Kelly helps lead our stewardship crews, who spend most of their days controlling non-native invasive species in western North Carolina. She's here to help us learn about some of the most pesky species in the Appalachian region and how to control them. But before we get started, let's address the elephant in the room. We know by now that NNIS spread quickly after a disturbance, natural or man-made, and our region, the southern Appalachians, recently experienced a huge disturbance. Tropical Storm Helene. A damage estimate from the North Carolina Forest Service stated that over 27% of forest land in affected counties sustained damage. In Buncombe County, where EcoForesters is based, about 40% of trees were damaged or destroyed. This damage not only presents non-native invasive plants with prime habitat, it also creates challenges when trying to control these species and mitigate further damage to forest health. As we take you through a few of the worst invasives in our area, we'll also be discussing how Helene has affected the spread and treatment of these plants. Let's start with Asiatic bittersweet, also known as Chinese or round-leaved bittersweet. This woody vine, native to China and introduced to North America in 1879, can form curtains of entangled vines, particularly along edge zones. Trees that are heavily infested with bittersweet growth can become suppressed and suffer from canopy collapse. Even open areas can become covered with bittersweet stems that will leaf out and outcompete native herbaceous plants.
Mature bittersweet is easily recognizable. The vines can become very large in diameter, dark gray in color, and have furrowed, blistered texture. It has squat, obovate leaves with serrated margins that are more coarse towards the tip. Young vines have a spindly appearance with a silver to reddish flesh. It features a small red berry with yellow capsules that grow dispersed along the younger twigs.
Asiatic bittersweet should not be confused with American bittersweet. This native species has a slightly more lancelet leaf shape and berries with orange capsules that grow in clusters at twig ends. American bittersweet grows throughout the eastern U.S., but it's not very common in western North Carolina. Deforestation caused by Hurricane Helene has resulted in new canopy openings and the establishment of new disturbance zones, particularly where wind-blown areas meet still standing woods. Bittersweet thrives in these conditions, where it's able to take advantage of increased sunlight, even as it climbs into tree canopies.
For mature vines, cut at eye level and then cut again at the soil level. Treat the root end with a 50% chemical solution of triclopyr-3 and water. The treatment for ground-crawling vines requires mixing up a chemical solution of 3% chemical triclopyr-3 and 0.5% of surfactant mixed with water. Use this solution in a backpack sprayer to coat all of the leaves of the plant. And then you want to retreat once or twice during the growing season, and of course, monitor for regrowth in the following years.
Tree of Heaven is one of the most prevalent invasive species in North Carolina, and it certainly doesn't live up to its name. This infamous tree, native to China, was originally brought over in the 1700s as a shade tree and horticultural specimen. It can reach 8 feet in its first year of growth and tolerates various soil types, especially poor, newly disturbed soil, but it's intolerant of full shade.
Tree of Heaven has pinnately compound leaves, meaning that each leaf has a central stem with multiple leaflets on both sides. The leaves range in length from 1 to 4 feet, with anywhere between 10 to 40 leaflets. The margins, or edges, of each leaflet are smooth, or what is referred to as entire. At the base of each leaflet, you will find 1 or 2 bumps known as glandular teeth. And when crushed, the leaves smell like burnt peanut butter. The bark of Tree of Heaven is light brown to gray, kind of resembling the skin of a cantaloupe. As the tree ages, though, the bark turns darker gray and becomes rough.
As we mentioned before, Helene created more opportunities for forest regeneration through opening up the forest canopy, letting more light hit the forest floor. If Tree of Heaven is in the vicinity of these canopy openings, it will take the lead for what regrows there. And if these trees were damaged due to high winds or flooding, keep your eyes peeled for any of its sucker sprouts that have responded to that damage.
Tree of Heaven has a pesky defense mechanism when it is threatened. It creates many clones of itself through sucker sprouting and through stump sprouts. These threats can be anything from a windstorm that has sheared the top of the tree off, to having it get uprooted, or even girdling it and treating it with herbicide incorrectly. Treating Tree of Heaven requires diligence and, of course, patience. The best time to treat is July to October. For trees taller than you and with a greater than 3-inch diameter at breast height, or DBH, the hack and squirt treatments are needed. Using a hatchet and a spray bottle, make hack marks around the base of the tree, like little pockets, with 1 inch of undisturbed bark between each hack mark. Spray the herbicide solution into the pockets that you've made around the trunk. The solution that is often used is 50% triclopyr-3 mixed with water. Later on, check to see if die-off is happening, and if not, retreat below the prior hack marks if necessary. Cut the tree down once it is fully dead to minimize sucker sprouting. If the tree is smaller than you and has less than 3 inches in diameter breast height, or DBH, a chemical solution of 3% triclopyr 3 and 0.5% of surfactant mixed with water can be used. Use this solution in a backpack sprayer to coat all of the leaves of the tree of heaven. Retreat once or twice during the growing season, monitor for regrowth in the following years, and if the shrubs are on the stream bank, use an aquatic safe herbicide instead.
Japanese knotweed is an herbaceous perennial plant native to Asia, known for its affinity for wet ditches and riparian areas. In western North Carolina, knotweed is a highly aggressive invasive plant that crowds native species out of those riparian spaces.
Look for fast-growing bamboo-like patches that have shovel-shaped or shield-looking leaves that end in a point. Knotweed is infamous for its ability to reroot. A single rhizome from a Japanese knotweed plant can float downstream and find its way into a new spot of bare riverbank, leading to a whole new infestation. This makes mechanical treatment of knotweed extremely difficult, as a single stray rhizome is enough to create a whole new viable plant.
Helene obviously had a profound effect on the waterways of western North Carolina. The intense flooding irreparably altered the landscape surrounding many streams, lakes, and rivers. The scarification of stream banks, combined with the rapid water flow, has provided the perfect storm for Japanese knotweed. The increased flow and damage to banks and streamside communities washed away lots of knotweed rhizomes right into the newly scarified banks of rivers and streams across the region.
To treat, you want to cut it down in June when it's mostly grown, and then chemically treat it with an aquatic safe herbicide in late August to mid-September. We use a 2.5% mix of imazamox and a 2.5% mix of glyphosate. These are mixed in a backpack sprayer with surfactant and a dye. You want to fully coat these leaves on a dry, non-windy day. Both of these chemicals are aquatic safe.
Multiflora rose is a deciduous shrub that was brought to the U.S. as a living fence to contain livestock. It can tolerate most environmental conditions, found in open fields, along forest edges and roadsides, in closed canopy forests, and even along the edges of wetlands. In extremely shady conditions, it can adapt by climbing into the mid-story like a vine. It will proliferate in a woodland or prairie and outcompete native grasses, forbs, and shrubs. It forms dense thickets that can degrade wildlife habitat and make woodlands more difficult for larger fauna to traverse.
Multiflora has red-brown to gray-brown bark, getting rough and or flaky when it matures. Younger stems are green and or red.
Sadly, if you see a rosebush growing in the wild in western North Carolina, chances are it's probably a multiflora rose. There are a handful of native rosebush species, with the two most common being swamp rose and Carolina rose. These native roses will usually have larger flowers not growing in clusters, usually only 1 to 2 per group. Another difference is the stipule, which is a sheath-like structure at the base of each compound leaf. Multiflora rose will have a fringed or feathered stipule, while our native roses will have stipules with smooth or very slightly serrated margins. Canopy openings from Helene have the potential to turbocharge the growth of already existing multiflora rose populations. While multiflora can tolerate shade, it can get monstrously big when it has full sun and productive forest soil. To make things worse, multiflora rose seeds can remain viable in the soil for up to 20 years. It's possible new populations can spring up under canopy openings from seeds distributed there 2 decades ago.
The best time to treat multiflora rose is early spring, typically around mid-March. Around this time, many of the native plants have not leafed out yet, and Multiflora rose will be a shock of green in our winterized forests. For mature shrubs with easy access to their base, cut the shrub's base and treat the root end and the cut end with a 50% chemical solution of triclopyr-3 in water. The cut ends of the plant can reroot and create a new plant, which is why you want to treat both. For multiflora that are below your eye level, mix a chemical solution of 3% triclopyr-3 and 0.5% of surfactant with water. Use this solution in a backpack sprayer to coat all of the leaves of the plant. Retreat once or twice during the growing season. Monitor for the regrowth in the following years. If the shrubs are on the stream bank, please use an aquatic-safe herbicide.
Last, but certainly not least, is Chinese silvergrass. Often just called miscanthus, it is a tall, flowering grass native to almost all of East Asia. It commonly grows up to 7 feet tall and forms very dense clumps from an underground rhizome. It is also extremely flammable, highly increasing fire risk of invaded areas.
Miscanthus grass, or Chinese silvergrass, grows in upright, densely bunched clumps, and the leaves are sharp and have a silvery, distinctive mid-vein down the entirety of its blade. The most striking feature of miscanthus grass is its flowers, or panicles, which are long, feather-like plumes that range from yellow-orange in the growing season to beige-tan in the dormant season as they age. These tassel-like panicles persist into the winter, making miscanthus very easy to spot.
The potential of miscanthus as an invasive species is thanks to its adaptability. Helene has created disturbance areas where miscanthus can easily spread and quickly outcompete recovering native foliage. Where some native species may struggle with changing light exposure, soil quality, and hydration levels, miscanthus's adaptability to these same conditions gives it the competitive advantage.
It's important to properly plan when treating miscanthus to prevent a resurgence of growth. An effective use of chemical calls for cutting the clump all the way to the ground first and then allowing it to regrow until the foliage is about 12 inches tall. Then spray it with a mix of 1% glyphosate with water and surfactant in a backpack sprayer. When the sprayed foliage is died, it is cut back again to the ground and the process is repeated until the grass stops regenerating. It has shown that spraying miscanthus clumps that are cut rather than the regrown foliage itself has proven to be ineffective when trying to manage and treat it. Additionally, burning this grass will promote its regrowth and increase its plant's reproductive vigor, if not followed by a chemical retreatment due to its large rhizomatous mass.
So, what can we do? If Helene made our invasives problem even worse, how do we begin to control them? Well, you've already achieved the first step, learning what's out there and how to identify it. Next, get into your woods and try to identify which species you might have. If you're comfortable with tackling the invasives you have on your own, you can use the information in this video and the resources linked down below to try and treat them. Otherwise, you can hire a stewardship crew. When choosing what to plant, make sure you know what you're purchasing. Many of these invasive plants are still sold commercially, so try to buy only native species. And the final step? Help us spread the word. Show off your newfound ID skills on your next hike, or share this video with a loved one that cares about our forests. The more people that are aware of the problem, the better chance we have at fighting back. And remember, just because it's green doesn't mean it's healthy.